We're back with Sid Dinerstein. We are here in South Florida right now doing this interview, and by some strange coincidence, South Florida happens to be such a very important, crucial part of the world, part of this country, with regard to the political situation. Tell us again, tell our viewers again, the significance of South Florida with regard to the next election.
Well, it is significant because Florida is a southern state with a huge amount of northeastern transplants. So instead of being a reliably Republican state, every once in a while it wanders over the line, and as it did in the last presidential election, and winds up supporting the Democrat. But of course, everybody remembers 2000, when we were as close down the middle as you could be, and it took computers and judges and the Supreme Court to try and figure out the difference. Kind of like when you watch a tennis match and they use the computer to show if the ball hit the line or not, and they have to enlarge it because it got that close. Well, that was us in 2000. We got that close. And that swung a presidential election for President Bush, thank goodness. But what you have in South Florida, particularly now in Broward and Palm Beach counties, are significant Jewish populations, primarily transplants, or as I called it, we went through this great migration of Jewish liberal voters who came down from the Northeast or moved up from Miami as the Cubans moved in and made Dade County a very Cuban county. The Democrats cannot win this state without doing very, very well in Broward and Palm Beach. The Democrats cannot do very, very well in Broward or Palm Beach without getting 75, 80% of the Jewish vote. And in fact, in 2000, when we had the recount, they got about 80%. And in 2008, which Obama won, they got about 78%. So they need those kinds of numbers. And if they don't get those kind of numbers, they won't win. In this off election, 2010, where the pollsters after the vote estimated the Jewish community at only 66% for the Democrats, the Republicans won every statewide election. And in Palm Beach County, the only one where we didn't do as well as we wanted was with Governor Scott, and he won a very, very close election across the state. So we know in Palm Beach County, if we get 40% of the total vote of Palm Beach County, then the Republican will win the state. But for us to do that, we have to get that Jewish vote down into the 60s. And as I'm projecting going forward this time, closer to about 60% than the 78 from last time. And we owe almost all of that to President Obama and his anti-Israeli rhetoric, policies, and attitude. So one of the reasons I enjoy being chairman here so much, I've been chairman now for 8.5 years, you realize how important it is. But the flip side is the responsibility becomes very, very great, because in this election, if our side fails, and if part of that is because we couldn't do the job in Palm Beach, and that meant we couldn't get the job done in the state of Florida, and that meant we couldn't do well enough in America, and if all that were to happen, the state of Israel's very existence would be threatened by a president who has made it clear that he wants Israel to have the borders that caused the war the last time, and that he seems to have more friends on the other side. And in fact, has never visited Israel, not only as president, but I'm pretty sure in his life, but has made it to a number of Arab states, and has already been publicly chastised by some of the leadership in Saudi Arabia to make sure that he, Barack Obama, signs on to the Palestinian state that they're trying to work through the United Nations this September. It's very, very frightening stuff. So the consequences of us not getting our job done are more than just a normal election. It's more than just higher taxes versus lower taxes. It literally goes to whether or not the state of Israel can exist the way it is today.
Sid, why traditionally have Jewish people tended to be in the Democratic Party more so and vote for them than the Republicans?
You know, I wish for their sake there was a reason. Meaning, I wish that I could tell you their reason, even if I disagreed with it, but that it would at least make sense to some people. There isn't a reason, and there's never been one. They are Democrats. They decided they were Democrats maybe when so many of their parents were socialists and communists. You know, they used to be called red diaper babies up in the New York area. But the saddest thing, for all their education, for all their pretensions of intellect, is there is no intellectual discussion that goes on. They are Democrats, and the other side isn't. And the issues, no matter how great, are absolutely irrelevant. Recently, a group of wealthy Jews paid $35,000 a plate to be with President Obama at a fundraiser within a month of his call for the 67 borders. It is preposterous that not only do they have to sell out their faith, they have to pay to sell out their faith. The Democrats, as you know, because of President Obama, have a new party chairman, national party chairman, right from here in Broward County, Deborah Wasserman Schultz. I call her Deborah Wasserman Soros because she acts as if that's where she takes her orders. And people say to me, well, why did the president appoint her? And the answer is because Rahm Emanuel is no longer in the administration and he needed his Jewish window dressing. So she's the poodle, and he gets to say, well, of course I'm a friend of the Jews. Look who the head of the party is, while he goes about consorting with our enemies and proposing policies that threaten our existence. And this is how the game is played in Washington today. And Debbie Wasserman Soros has no problem on a daily basis selling out her faith. And when the issue was raised after the president's speech, she said Israel is an issue that neither party should talk about. That's her wish.
That's an interesting statement. By the way, we have extended invitations to Democratic members of Congress, and we are trying to provide an opportunity for both sides to present their views on the Shalom Show. These are pretty outspoken comments you're sharing with us today, Sid. Again, I would like you to elaborate on how you explain the fact that traditionally Jews seem to tend to be democratic. Give us some more information on that.
I'll give you some juxtaposition. There are a number of Jews of American citizenship in Israel who vote in our presidential elections. Well, these days, they're 80% Republican, as is Israel, which when they weigh in on America today, Israel's all Republican, except for the very small, peace people.
And that's an interesting fact. So you're saying that American Democratic voters, citizens who happen to be now residing in Israel, and they see with their own eyes.
They all vote off for our side. When the recount happened and all of that, the whole overseas votes, aside from the military that the Democrats tried not to count, shame on them, but one of the other blocs were the Jews in Israel. And today that's an overwhelming Republican bloc. So that gives you a juxtaposition. They are Democrats. If George Bush attacks Iraq, they are Democrats and George Bush is the devil. If Barack Obama does a surge in Afghanistan, they are Democrats, and it was a stroke of military genius. So Democrats are never wrong. They're Democrats.
Interesting. You wrote a book, this book right here, Adults Only, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about it.
It's a public policy book, and as I modestly tell people, it's the best public policy book you'll ever read. So I say that with all due modesty, but why is that? It's a one airplane ride book. And within that one airplane ride, it covers many of the major public policy problems of the day, and it offers solutions that are highly specific. And it does it by taking complicated issues and reducing them to sound bites. And I can tell your viewers that it reads the way I speak.
Where can people find this book?
On my website, SidDinerstein.com.
Sid, before we conclude, I'd like to ask you to share with our audience a final message at this time.
I do have a final message, and not just for your Jewish viewers, for all viewers, for all Americans. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You don't just get to sit around and vote once every 4 years and think that somehow you've met your obligations to our society. We have the economic problems that we have because we left it up to other people and they figured we weren't paying attention. We have the problems with Israel that we have because the Jewish community in America is either silent or gives the impression that the president can take their votes for granted and do what he wants with Israel. So everybody has an obligation to be a participant, but you don't have the luxury of leaving it to everybody else. And for both America with its economy and Israel with its enemies, the stakes are so high that none of us thought they would ever be, that either place would be in this kind of peril at this point in our lives. So that is my message to everybody, is that we get the government we deserve, so we have to make sure that we deserve better than what we're getting.
Sid, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and I wish all of us the very best. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This brings us to the end of our special show for today from On Location in Palm Beach County. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.